So I've got a little bit different video here for you guys today. This is a computer video, and I want to talk about something. So this is a Intel NUC 3rd gen, and this is an i3 3rd gen. I've had this NUC for about a year and a half, and this NUC is after the 8th gen NUC that I have on my channel. And that NUC was a great NUC, but it was a series of unfortunate events. We had a storm, which is kind of ironic because we have a storm coming through right now. And so I apologize if you hear rain or thunder in the background, or maybe you'll actually find it relaxing. But what had happened to that NUC was the Ethernet port and 2 of the USB ports got taken out by lightning. Now, where I was living at the time, just for some strange reason, we had so many power issues, and lightning was just, it was like a breeding ground for lightning in that area that we lived. So, after we moved, I've actually been using this Intel NUC i3 as a home server and file server. And I had been running Windows 8, and I was just sharing some drives over for my home server. Well, I've got another case coming for this, and that's not an important thing. This is just a simple basic case. But I wanted to go ahead and get this video created and show you, kind of the meat of everything that I've got going on here. So when I was running that Windows file server, and I will actually, let me go into that for just a little bit. When I was running Windows on this, I wanted to get rid of Windows, and one of the other reasons that I was using Windows is because it ran my SDR play with I was using HD SDR, and now what they're going to be doing is actually coming out with some new software for that SDR play that's can actually be used on Linux and or Mac. Now, you could have ran the SDR play. I had the very, very first version. Like, it wasn't even the 1A, it was just the RSP1. Like, it was the very first model. And that model is not going to support the new software that they're coming out with. So I went ahead and just got rid of that SDR play because they're going to be coming out with some new software, and it'll be, you can run it on Linux and or Mac. Now, the old one, you could have ran it on Linux, but all the software that was available for that, it wasn't the best. I mean, it did work, but all of that software didn't have noise reduction. It didn't have some of the features that I needed. And that was the only reason why I still kept Windows around, was for that freaking SDR play. Now, because they're coming out with the new software, I'm going to totally get rid of Windows in my life. Just get rid of it. It's because I'm going to be running Proxmox on this server, this Intel NUC. And when I was running Windows on here, what I had 2 drives. I had one that was formatted as NTFS, and I had one that was formatted as exFAT. And these are each one of these are 5 terabyte drives. And what I was doing was this. So when I first created this is when I had the iPad, and the reason why I had one as NTFS is because the stupid file system that the iPad had could only see NTFS shares through the network. It could not see it if it was an exFAT formatted drive. But it was dumb because you could take an exFAT formatted drive and plug it into the iPad and it would read it. So what I was doing is I was using SyncToy, and everything that this drive was shared over my network, and everything that was shared, or everything that was on this drive, I would have SyncToy running to automatically back it up to the exFAT drive. That way, if anything ever happened to the share, I could just take this drive, plug it directly in, and access all of my files. And because that was working, I had just continued to use it with my MacBook Air, and I didn't really see that big of a need to change it until I got the news that the SDR Play is going to be making some software towards the end of this year. So I figured, let's just go ahead and wipe it out and put Linux or Proxmox or something like that on here, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So these each are two 5 terabyte drives, like I said, and what I've got here, and this is a little bit confusing. So this is a WD-RED M-SATA, or not M-SATA, I'm sorry, M.2 500 gig SATA SSD. Now, it's an M.2 drive, but it uses the SATA bus for the top slot on this particular NUC, and this is the 5th gen NUC. And what it is, okay, so this is a B key M.2 SSD. The bottom slot is an E key M.2 M.2 connector. Now, that bottom slot is typically used for things like a Wi-Fi card or 4G card or something like that, and it's the 2230 size. Now, I have an adapter here that is adapting the E key M.2 slot into a NVMe M.2 slot. Now, here's the problem. Obviously, because this is a B key, this drive can't fit into this top slot, and it also can't fit into the bottom slot. Now, here's where it gets really weird. They don't make a B key M.2 to NVMe adapter, but they do make an E key M.2 to NVMe M.2 adapter. I know that's very confusing, and I don't really quite understand it, because here's where it even gets even more confusing. Both of these M.2 slots are sharing, or not, they're not sharing, they each have 2 lanes of PCIe Gen 2 lanes. And also this, let me move this ribbon cable out of the way. And then of course, it also has a regular SATA port for your typical, 2.5-inch drive. And this is also a 6 gig bus. The top slot is a 2-lane PCIe slot, and the bottom one is 2 lanes. So now here, it's kind of strange. This works, and I'll show you guys how it's running. And I'm actually using Proxmox, or I was playing around with Proxmox at first to get this all set up and making sure this would actually work. Now, I'm not sure why they don't make an adapter. At least I couldn't find one, and I scoured the internet. They don't make a B key to NVMe adapter, because if you try to take this NVMe and plug it into the slot, it doesn't work, because you have to flip it around. And even if you flipped it around, which obviously that doesn't ever really work, at least not to my knowledge, but it's the slot, the actual slot where the key is, it doesn't line up, and it doesn't on the bottom slot either, which is the E key. But they make an adapter, which it's really strange, because you would think they would be more likely, and when I say they, I just mean manufacturers and third party places would be more likely to create an adapter for the top B slot than they would the bottom one. So I'm not really sure why. But here's another thing, is they make a B key M.2 adapter that either has 2 or 5 SATA ports. And I'm not quite sure why, but it actually can somehow extract more speed. And when I say that, if you look around on some forum posts, you'll actually see where some of the people are actually getting full speed on like 3 SATA ports. And I'm not really sure how the heck it works, but the reason I didn't go with that is because I wanted to keep this as small and compact as I possibly could. And so if you were going to get an M.2 B key adapter with those SATA ports, make sure you look for the JM, which is J Micron 585 or 582 adapter, and the 582 is the 2-port, and the 585 is the 5-port SATA adapters. Those are actual adapters. They're not port multipliers. And another brand that makes the real SATA ports is AS Media. But if you get like the 575, those are not full ports. Those are port multipliers, which is basically just taking one SATA port and splitting it off into multiple, it's multiplying it basically. So, and you don't get the full speed with that. So that's one way that I could have gone with this, but I went with this particular system, and there was something on there, some piece of dirt or something. So, okay. See, I say that a lot. I'm not sure. Let me try and get rid of or delete that part. This video has taken me about 2 weeks to create. And I've actually already recorded this part, and I had the video totally, completely edited, but I realized when I was listening to it back, I forgot some things, and I left some things out to explain what was going on here. So, the reason why it's taken me so long is because Amazon, it's a love-hate relationship. I had ordered some M.2 SATA SSD drives, but they kept sending me NVMe drives. They sent me a 1 terabyte team group drive, which was NVMe, and it would not work in the top slot. And they also sent basically another one, but it was a 512 gig drive. And finally, because I was trying to go with all of this, I wanted this all to be team group drives. Because Team Group has so many different drives out there, I think maybe it was just getting mixed up in the ordering process or something with Amazon. So I just to try it out, because I have my backup drives, I went ahead and tried the WD Red SATA M.2 drive. But for my other two drives, I've got this Team Group NVMe 2 terabyte drive, and then I also have this NVMe, or this regular SATA Team Group drive. And the SD card that's actually in my camera right now that's recording this is a Team Group SD card, and it's a UHS 2 card. And I had another one on another camera that I had, but I sold that card with that camera. And then in the past, I've also had some Team Group RAM, and this is also Team Group RAM in here as well. And I haven't had any issues with that brand. It has been absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to be getting all of this ready to plug in and make it to where I can install Proxmox. And then I'm going to show you guys the process of what it is I'm actually doing. So this is going to be my boot drive, which is going to house Proxmox and a Linux server in case I change my mind, Open Media Vault, stuff like that, and some VMs. And then this drive and this drive are going to be my actual storage shares over the network, and I may even kind of maybe do like a software raid on these two. And then my two 5 terabyte drives are just going to be used with Rsync or something like that, and it's going to back up what's on these two drives. So I also have because this has a 1 gig Ethernet port, I also have a TP-Link, because I have a TP-Link router and a TP-Link switch, and I haven't had any issues with that brand either. I'm going to have a USB 3 adapter to a gig Ethernet, and I'm going to team those or bond those together so I can actually get some decent speed out of this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of this put back together so that I can then record the rest of this video where I'm actually installing Proxmox, or let me back up, where I'm fumbling around with Proxmox and showing you guys exactly what it is I'm going to end up doing here. So I'm going to get all this put back together, and I'll see you in just a little bit. Okay, so first thing is first, we are going to install Proxmox server. I already downloaded this the other day, but don't know what I did with the flash drive, so I'm going to download the ISO, and that's going to take a while. So if you guys notice here, I've got the team. So this is from the capture card on my NUC. So this is the 2 terabyte that's plugged into the SATA port. There's the WD red plugged into the top M.2 SATA port, and you can see here it actually recognizes that, and this isn't in the title of the actual drive, it's on the NUC itself right here. It shows it's an M.2 NVMe SSD, and that's the Team Group T-Force drive, the 2 terabyte one. So I'm really confused, like what's going on here, that it can actually recognize in the BIOS that it's an NVMe drive, and it officially doesn't support it. I don't know. I'm really confused, but hey, it works. Or the Proxmox is now done downloading, so we are going to go to Balena Etcher. And I'm going to flash from file. These are my downloads. Where'd it go? Did I already have it? I already had it downloaded. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we're just gonna hit open. Select target. Drive is plugged in. Going to boot from the USB drive and get this thing installed. Install Proxmox. Apologize if you can hear a train in the background. I got a train about 4 miles from me, so, and I'm recording this in my workshop, so yeah. So agree. I'm going to select my WD drive for installation. So this doesn't really need to be anything, just type in a fake email. Host name, I don't believe that needed to be anything, but I can't remember. My IP address, oh crap. Okay, so I had a little bit of a hiccup with the Wi-Fi and Ethernet sharing on my MacBook. I thought when I installed this before on my home network that it automatically picked up the subnet, but I could be wrong. I can't remember if I had to manually enter it or if those were the default values that it puts in, but I went ahead and set it up as if it was going to be plugged in, and I changed some settings on my Mac, so we'll see if it works. Okay, so I've got Proxmox installed now, and it wouldn't be a 47 Hobbies video if I didn't have some weird issues, but it was actually my fault because I was severely overthinking this. I was thinking, well, I can't run a 100-foot Ethernet cable, at least not right now, from the house to the shop, and I was trying to share the internet connection on my Mac to an Ethernet port. Well, that didn't work, and then I was like, duh, I'm on the same Wi-Fi network. Why don't I just go plug it in? I was really trying to overthink that. So, but I've got it installed. And then what you do is you go to the IP address that you assigned, which mine is 192.168.168.147, which this is the new TP links that they use. So anyway, so this is my node, which is the vault. And if I go to my disks, you can see that these are the ones that I had created before. So you can see my 2 5 terabyte drives. This is the boot drive, this is the boot drive, the WD red, and then I've got my 2 my NVMe drive, and then the regular SATA port drive. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, okay, so you go in, you add your CIF share. It doesn't have to be that. You can do it from an actual physical disk, but because I first started playing around with this, like a week or two ago, I haven't actually had time to actually transfer all my data over to this thing. So right now I just have a temporary share from a family member's Windows PC. Okay, so I only did this one time before, actually twice, but so you're going to make sure that the vault or your node is selected. Click on Create VM, and it's going to ask you what node you want to choose. You have to choose the ID. It usually starts at 100, and then you name it something, like what the VM is going to be called. So mine's Open Media Vault. I'm typing with one hand right now. And then, so when it asks for your OS, this is looking for that CIF share that you shared or the physical location if you set it up that way. I have it on HP, and then it automatically finds the ISOs for that. Whenever you create a CIF share, look on Proxmox's wiki for when you create that share, it's going to automatically add 4 folders. And in those 4 folders on that share, you're going to have a folder called template, and then under that folder, there'll be another one that says ISO, and you add all of your ISOs to that one. So I've got Open Media Vault, and you go to System. Usually all of this is just, I leave it to the default. And then disks, this is where it's automatically going to select the boot drive, or I'm going to select the boot drive. If you do this, it's going to try and boot from that share. You don't want to do that. You want to select your local LVM, which is logical volume. And Open Media Vault doesn't need that much. I'm going to choose 8 gigs. It says you can run it on 4, but I'm going to choose 8. In case I want to install some plugins or anything like that. Because you can install Open Media Vault on a 4 gigabyte USB drive. So CPU is 1 socket. I'm going to give it 2 cores. Memory, I'm going to give it 4096, which is 4 gigs. It says you can run it on 1 gig. I was looking it up earlier. It says 1 gig of RAM. I haven't played with Open Media Vault that much, so I don't know if it's ever going to go above that. I probably should give it a little more, but we'll see how this works out, because I don't stress it out. I'm just backing up my personal files to it. So on the network, it's going to automatically choose what you have here. I just choose VirtIO. This seems to be the best performing one from the forums that I've read. When you hit next, it's going to say confirm, hit finish, and what that's going to do is create the VM under your vault. So this Open Media Vault, this is the actual VM. If you hit start, it's actually going to boot it up, and when you hit console, go to no VNC, and this is going to bring up the actual interface for actually installing it. Hit install, and this will take a little bit. So I tried TrueNAS, and TrueNAS was good as far as if you just wanted to do file storage. And then it did have the ability to do some VMs, but they ran kind of slow, and it didn't have fantastic support for Arch-based Linux distributions. So I'm going to be using Proxmox, and just go through your settings here to select what you want to install or how you want to install it. Okay, I completely forgot that Open Media Vault has a weird, I'm not really sure if it's a bug or what it is, but you have to go in, when you have install selected, you have to hit tab, and you need to basically type in this command, which is ipv6 dot disable underscore ipv6 equals 1, and then hit enter. And basically what that is that there's something wrong with it's like a bug or something, and it disables IPv6. I don't know why it would try to use that, but yeah. So once the VM is done installing, so like Open Media Vault, you're going to remove the CD-ROM drive, which it was in between these two, the hard disk and the network drive. You just select it, and then you hit, well, mine said remove, so you click remove. And then once you do that, if you hit start, go back to your console, it should start. And it is. So it's going to boot up Open Media Vault, and then once it gets to its main page, we will be able to access it. So yeah, 6878. So let's do that now. No, it was... So the default password for Open Media Vault is Open Media Vault. I'll have to change that later. Now you can see it's going to... Yeah, that's just when I try to log in. So another kind of weird thing about Open Media Vault is that when you make some changes, not all of them, it saves some of the changes into your browser's cache, and I'm not really sure how to find a workaround for that. And what you have to do, sometimes you'll see like an error up here that says software bad request, and you have to clear your browser cache and all of your history to get it to work again. So if you go to storage, you'll see disks, and obviously I don't have any disks installed. This SDA, this is the one that I created, which is the 8 gig drive from Proxmox. So to get them to show up here, you have to go into your Proxmox server, go to the vault, go to your disks, which is all of these, and then if you hit this one, no, add hard drive, which is SATA, right? No. So this is a day later that I have spent some time playing around with Proxmox and Open Media Vault. For some reason, I had a serious brain fart and I forgot how to actually add the disks. I know I did this a different way when I first installed Proxmox, when I was playing around with it. And for the life of me, I cannot remember how I did it. I think this is the way that I did it, but I'm not 100% sure. So this is my Proxmox VM, or my Open Media Vault VM. And when you go to your vault or your node and you go to your disks, it's going to show all of your disks that you have here. So the way I did it is I added an LVM to each disk that I'm sharing over to Open Media Vault. So I've got my two 5 terabyte drives, and then I have my NVMe drive and my regular SATA SSD. And the way that I did it was, after I created these LVMs, you have to then go to hardware for your node, which is your VM, And when you click on add, it's going to ask you, I just left it the SCSI and the vert.io. It's going to ask you what disk. So ignore these available in capacities right here because I've already set this up. What you want to do is, because it's asking for the GIB gigabyte instead of actual gigabyte, the problem is your capacity. This is not your actual capacity of the drive. To get your actual capacity, and I'll show you a very simple, easy way. When you go back to your vault, you go to disks. When you click on your actual disk, you're going to probably want to write these down or just memorize them. When you click on wipe disk, it'll actually tell you the actual size in TB for that drive. So you can see mine is 1.86 TIB. And then what I did is I just went to a calculator. I think I went to this first one right here. So if you go to, just type in what the actual disk is. So 1.86. This will tell you the size in GIB. So it was 1904.64. Once you go back to your Proxmox, obviously I don't want to erase that. You go back to your drive. When you add your hard disk, you select your LVM, and this is where you type in that number. Now, I did this on the 5 terabyte drives, these ones right here. And for some reason, I'm not quite sure why it says that, because the actual capacity is 4.55 TIB. When I typed in 6959, for some reason it still didn't work. It didn't accept it. So I just had to keep lowering that number by 1 until it got to 4655. I'm not sure why this one is particularly different than that one. I think maybe because it's an actual spinning disk, and this is an SSD. I doubt that has anything to do with it. And then like this one, for instance, this one shows up in K and not G. I don't know. A lot of it has to do with trial and error, at least for me, because I'm not an expert with this software. So, but anyway, I got it up and running, and I've got all of these shared over. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is my network. So on the vault, or if you go to the vault, this is what I call it, your node. When I set up my network, this was a little bit of trial and error as well. So I've got these two devices. This one is my Intel NIC, which is built onto the NUC. And then this is that TP-Link device that I bought. Now, these are, I wanted to bond these two. So what you have to do is you have to create a bond, and then you have to tell the bond, hey, I just want to use this one, and just use those two, and don't give it an IP address. And then I tried this with the Balance RR, and for some reason Open Media Vault just was like at an absolute crawl. I changed this over to Balance ALB, and it started working a lot better, and it completely saturates my 1 gig network. Now, even though I have these teamed, obviously I'm not getting 2 gig. The reason I did this is because I'm eventually going to get an access point that is 2 gig. That way I can actually take full advantage of this system. Because my router that's on my home network is only a 1 gig, and it's a TP-Link, it's a mesh network, and it works really good, just for Wi-Fi. And it has, the 1 gig port, which I have to have another, have a 8-port switch on it, I believe, and it is, it's a TP-Link, it's a gig. But anyways, once I get a 2 gig switch access point, this will start to work. So I created that bond, and then after you create the bond, for that bond to actually work, you then have to create a bridge, and you have to tell the bridge, hey, I want to use the bond, and then this is where you actually give it the IP address. Then it'll start to work with your VM, and then you can go to your network on your VM and tell it, hey, I want to use the bridge. So the cool thing about that is when I was only using one NIC on Open Media Vault, I was only getting about 75 to 80 megabytes a second. Once I created the two together and bonded them and then used the bridge, it's actually fully saturating the entire, I think it gets about 112, 113 megabytes a second. Okay, so these are the disks under my Open Media Vault. You can see they're all identified as SCSI 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is the boot. I've created a RAID, a software RAID for the two SSDs together. It's in a stripe mode, which is RAID 0. And then I just created a file system for that, which is ext4. And I've already transferred most of my stuff over to, because I had a portable NTFS drive, and I just connected that to my MacBook, and then I shared everything over to that RAID. I know it doesn't look like I'm only using 561 gigabytes because I actually did a purge of all of my data, and I got rid of a bunch of stuff that I don't use anymore. So now I'm going to be creating so the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously go to your update management and do your updates. And I installed the only plugin that I have installed is the file browser. I don't really have a need for any of this other stuff. Maybe I'll install the OneDrive plugin if my wife needs to use this for her school, and that way anything she has is I can have it already backed up to it. So now once so the only thing I haven't done yet is create my backup for my two 5 terabyte drives. So that's the next thing that I need to do. So I need to create a new file system for those. So I'm going to select my SDC, which is it's going to be ext4. And this goes through, and it takes about, I think the last time I did this, it's like maybe 5 to 7 minutes. It won't take very long. Once it's done creating the file system, it's going to ask you to mount that file system that you just created. So you just select the one. So I've already did this for the other drive. This is the second one. Hit save, and then it's going to mount it. And then it's going to ask you apply these pending changes. Click yes, and this takes about a minute or so. Now that is mounted, I am going to go into my services, and I'm going to go to Rsync. I'm going to create a task. So this is going to be local. Shared folder is going to be the Vault RAID, and the destination. Okay, so I messed up. Let me back up. So I know it seems a little bit confusing if you're coming from just a basic home system on, like, let's say you were just using Windows to share some drives over. On Open Media Vault, on your storage, anything that you create on your disks and your file systems and your software RAIDs, and I apologize if you hear a noise in the background, I'm recording outside. If you create a file system or a software RAID or whatever, you have to share the folder. And this doesn't actually mean you're sharing it over the network. You're just sharing it so that all of these services can actually use that. So for instance, like I've already shared my software RAID for those two SSDs. So now I have to create a new share for my two 5 terabyte drives. So, and I'm just doing this one by one. And the reason why I'm doing it one by one is because I'm going to create an rsync for each different drive, and I'm going to have them sync to each other at different intervals. So like I'll have it sync to one at every 12 hours, and then I'll have it sync to the other one at every 12 hours. The reason for that is I don't want to create a RAID mirroring system, because if one drive fails, I want to be able to take the other one and just plug it directly into like a Linux distro or something like that, or possibly plug it into my MacBook with, you know, some sort of software that can read the ext4 file system. That, or if one drive fails, then I can just go out, get another one, plug it in, set up the file system, and have everything synced over into that drive. So because I know a lot of people like the automated system, you know, with RAID, but I like to do some stuff manually. So yeah, I'm going to create that one for WD1, and going to give this read write everyone. And the reason for that is just to make things simpler. This isn't a production type environment. This is just a home based system. Okay, so I've created that share, and then I'm going to create the other one. Just my WD. Okay, comment, I'll do everyone, save that. So now that those are actually shared, hit apply. After those are created, then you can go to your services, go to Rsync Tasks, create a new task. So I'll do local, source is going to be my RAID, destination is going to be WD1, and this one I'm going to uncheck it, and this one uncheck the 1, and I'm going to check 12. Oh, you actually have to have at least 0 set. Okay. Month, day of week, no. I usually don't mess with any of this. I do select delete, because usually if I'm deleting something, I'm 100% sure that I'm going to delete it. Because that's just, I have a very weird my backup system and the way that it works in my mind is probably a lot different than a lot of people. So that's how I like to do that. So I'm going to save that. And so when you're first, yes, okay. And this is the other thing that I like Open Media Vault because it's quick, it's simple. The one thing that is kind of irritating is that you always have to apply every single little thing that you're doing. I know that's just a minor annoyance. I know, first world problems. Create. So I'm going to create the other one, which is going to be the source, destination, WD2, 0, hour. See, now this is where it gets a little confusing. I think I'll do every 23rd hour. Yes, I want to delete, save. So these, are you going to apply? Have me apply? Yep, I knew it. So on the Rsync server settings, I don't think I messed with these at all. I don't think so. I think I just went to Rsync, made those tasks, and then I just think I ran at least one of them. Yeah, so there it goes. This is just going to run in the background, and that's pretty much it in terms of Open Media Vault. So the next thing that I'm going to show is probably going to be creating a new VM for a Linux distro that I have come to really, really like. And this is going to be local, and I'm going to create a Garuda VM. And I'm going to set all this up. I've already disk size. I'm going to give this one, let's give it a little more. Let's give it 75 because I'm going to be using it quite a bit. Local Vertio, yes. CPU, I'm going to give it all of my cores. It's a dual core, 4 threads, so that's all that it needs. And then I'm going to give it 11264 because I gave Open Media Vault 5 gigabytes. Next, we're going to do the virtual bridge that I created. And next, finish. Now, we are unable to create VM. Why? What is your problem? What is your major malfunction? Insufficient free space. Bullcrap. You have plenty of free space. Okay, so system, all that's default disks. Oh, oops, I accidentally selected the wrong one. So, make sure when you're creating this that you select the proper drive, which this is my boot WD Red drive. That was my mistake. Yes, CPUs 4, memory 11264. Next, network, yes, confirm. Okay, created that, or it's creating it, I hope. Okay, so now that one's created, we can go ahead and start it up. Hit the console to no VNC. Let me make sure I'm actually recording. Yes. Boot. I always use I always go with open source drivers. Just seems to work for me. And this is going to take a little bit for it to boot up. And we'll see exactly how well it does while Open Media Vault is running that backup in the background. Now, I know before I ran this, I did not enable the virtualization process. I'm going to do all of that later because right now I'm just kind of playing around. This is like I said, this is my second time, getting into Proxmox. And it's not doing too bad in terms of CPU usage. Right now it's at 100% because it's probably doing something. Yeah. See? We want to install. There it goes. Okay. Yep. Okay. So we're going to see how well this does installing. It's going to start, we're starting at 126. While this is running, it's about 82%, 61. I've got Open Media Vault going over here. Garuda does take, I wouldn't say terribly long, but it does take a little bit longer to install than other distros just because it has a different way of how it installs Linux. I just know when I installed it on bare metal, it is probably the fastest Linux distro I've ever used. And I really wish they would create an ARM version of Garuda so I could use it on my Mac. That would be absolutely amazing. Garuda is now done installing. I'll hit restart now. And then I'm going to close VNC, and then the CPU usage. It took about started at 26. It wasn't terrible. Open Media Vault. What am I even saying? Open Media Vault is still running. Did it reboot? Yes, it did. Okay, cool. So this is going to, I'm not going to go through all of this. It says, welcome to Garuda. It's going to want me to do the setup assistant thing. I believe when I did this before, it actually had an issue. Update the system, yes. For some reason, it didn't want to update the very first time. Like, it didn't want to refresh the mirror list, and I forgot what I had to do. Actually, I think I just had to reboot it again and then rerun update. Yeah, as you can see, I've got Garuda up and running. Obviously, it's not the best right now because I don't have the Vert.io, or not Vert.io, the virtualization stuff set up, because I will do all of that in a part 2 video. But as you can see, it's not terrible, for running on an i3, because, this is still running as I've got, Open Media Vault running Rsync in the background. And so it's not doing terrible. So I will do a part 2 video, because this has been, this video is going to end up being over 30 minutes long. Oh, there it goes. Yes, I do. No. Yes, I want to upgrade. Go ahead. Okay, so, yeah, like I said, I will do a part 2 a little bit later in the week, and I'll see you guys then.